I'm going to pretend like this is where the intro music goes. It's September 10th and the world is full of garbage. Mitch McConnell appears to be suffering a series of mini strokes while aides insist he's fine, just fine, and should definitely still be in a position of power and decision making for an entire nation. Trump had a mugshot taken. Ron DeSantis is flailing in the public spotlight as he tries to convince people he is a human who could become president. And student loan payments are about to resume after 3 years of learning that not paying them had no negative impacts on the economy. None. Nothing happened. But that is all beside the point, because today we're seriously just talking about garbage. Just garbage. And for this episode, I've brought in a friend of mine. I've known him for years. His name is Corey, and you can actually find him on the podcast, Three Kids No Sleep, co-hosted by his wife. It's been going on for how old your oldest?
It's almost seven. Almost 7 years.
7 years of podcasting.
It's, if you want a hobby, have some kids. That's if you're bored and you're suffering from an excess of sleep and
you know what I love most about your podcast?
What's that?
That you do it live.
Oh yeah.
You do it 24/7.
And I don't believe in recording it either. Like you've got to be in the house with me.
That it is an experiential podcast.
It's exactly.
I've only caught it for like a couple hours at a time over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And
I'm on the avant-garde.
And you even do like field trips, like out in the open.
I'll take my kids somewhere,
which is crazy.
Do the podcast
that is
right
wild.
there on the playground or at the Chuck E. Cheese.
Anything could happen.
Oh yeah,
the whole time.
Yeah, it's completely unscripted, non-television. I'm breaking it in.
So for this episode, I sent you a script. The people listening, they don't know. We're talking about plastic today and trash, which you are actually an expert on because I
make piles of it.
You make piles of it. You also are a connoisseur of RC cars, which are like 99% plastic.
Yeah, that's what you want.
And so I thought, who better than my friend Corey?
Literally no one.
I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, no, definitely.
For the record, this episode is about the horrors of recycling in general and why you shouldn't do it. Or at least why it's not your individual responsibility to save the planet through recycling, or why your efforts have absolutely no impact on the planet and nothing you do matters. But then I realized that I'm really just talking about plastic because, you should still definitely recycle glass and...
Yeah, and actually glass, I don't know what the environmental impact is, but for me, I definitely recycle paper, cardboard, and you can actually buy recycled toilet paper and paper towels and things like that. And that actually is significantly better for the environment than buying fresh, call it virgin toilet paper. and that is actually something you do want to recycle.
Now, the thing I like about glass and metal is that they are they're infinitely reusable, and it's just good practice to recycle them. You can get money. You can take your metal to a scrap place. I don't know if you knew this about me. When I was super broke and poor, I actually used to go metal scrapping, I would take my truckload full of shit to the local dump. And I once hauled a truckload of Jaguar transmissions to a scrapyard in North Carolina, and I think I got $300 for it.
Nice. That's big money back then.
It was pretty good. That was actually back when I had one of those little Nissan hard bodies.
Oh, I love the hard body.
And the bed was scraping
very nice.
on the bump stops, and it was very hard to drive.
Right,
it was like driving a boat.
Your front wheels were not on the ground.
No, it was like driving a boat, or just doing a wheelie the whole way there. Also, one of my first dates with Anna, we actually went to. Do you know Clark Iron and Metal in Murfreesboro?
I do not.
It's in the industrial part of town.
Is it off Clark?
No, actually, it's off
one end.
Shoot, it doesn't matter what
Samsonite.
It's it is actually off Samsonite.
Oh, nice. Yeah, because there was a place that you could dump old TVs. It was off Samsonite.
Yeah.
Now it's Middle Tennessee Boulevard or something like that.
Anyway, bang in there.
Whatever.
So Clark Iron and Metal actually has we call it the junk of the day, because everything that they don't scrap, they actually just put out front. And so they used to put tractors, and they'd have military vehicles, but they always have washers and dryers. And so one of our first dates, I took her to look at the trash of the day out in front of Clark Iron and Metal.
That's when she knew.
It was 11 o'clock at night, and I drove around to an industrial part of town. And it was hey, you want to go look? You want to look at some washers and dryers?
You can't argue with the results, right?
To be fair, that I also had that hard body, so if I saw something good, I was definitely going to take it.
Oh yeah, and that's the pickup privilege, right?
So, boy, humans sure have fucked up with plastic, huh, Corey?
Yeah. I've known a little bit about it, but it was definitely. It's always eye-opening to actually read the figures of how many billions of tons of stuff that we've made.
We're actually, fun fact, we're going to get into all of that. But we've fucked up so bad. It's almost like we should have just left all that oil in the ground. Anyway, this is Unfuck the Poor, and this is where I'm going to play that little intro, and it's going to go do.
I just want to say one word to you. Just one word.
Yes, sir.
Are you listening?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Plastics.
Saran wrap.
Now get these lovely washable plastic roses free
That's right.
when you buy these favorite Procter & Gamble household helpers.
Saran wrap.
That's right. There's nothing like saran wrap.
Saran Wrap is a product of the Dow Chemical Company.
That's right.
Plastic makes it possible.
That's right.
It's amazing. Elastic plastic.
Remember the high celluloid collars you used to wear? Well, they were plastic.
That's right.
Okay, so Corey, maybe I was a bit extreme in my intro. There are some good justifiable uses of plastic. Medical supplies come to mind. Can you think of any? Because that's all I got. I got medical supplies.
I mean, anything that's gonna needs to be perfectly preserved for a long time, like anything like where the plastic, the stability of the plastic itself is something that is a bonus, not something you use once and then it takes 10,000 years to disintegrate. So like things you use for, I don't know, say 100 years or a decade or something like that would be better. I don't know if that would be ideal, but better than single use.
The interesting thing about that is things that actually like last longer, like that you think you would buy like for perpetuity, we are more likely to throw away before their usable life.
Oh yeah, for
is
sure.
up, which is wild to me because our what we're offered eventually in the market is like new and shiny.
Right.
Instead we want the new and we don't.
Right.
So durable goods.
I mean, I've fallen victim to that myself. I have a perfectly good like 10-year-old laptop, and I was like, I kind of want a new one. And I put it off for several years, and then I was like, I just want to get a new one.
The only reason that we bought a new car is because the other one didn't have air conditioning. The air conditioner broke, and we were like, well, fuck it, throw it away. We're done with this car. We're getting a new one.
Well, as a capitalist, I want to thank you for that. It's don't reduce, don't reuse.
So, medical supplies. That's actually where the actual single-use plastic came from. Was the medical industry. The 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s was actually pretty interesting in terms of like what we thought was healthy and what wasn't. There was still this theory, like the miasma theory, like stuff floating in the ether was making us sick, which kind of
you can see where they're coming from.
Yeah, but really it was like germs, like bacteria,
Yeah.
and it wasn't like an upsetting of the humors. It was more like infection. So I forget the name of the doctor, but he at one point was like, well, we got these like plastics, they're cheap, we can like make moldable gloves. So he started using them in surgery and his infection rates dropped. And so like in the late 1800s, you had like surgery was made better. Medicine was made better by the use of single-use plastics and the invention of single-use plastics. So in general, us, you and I, consumer public, we never should have been given the curse of forever plastic. That's really, in my opinion, it's more of like an industrial, like commercial, like that's where those applications are best. And for like consumers, it makes more sense that we would have just biodegradable stuff because we're always buying and always throwing away. Like every single day, every human generates something like 1.1 pounds of trash or something like that, or 2.1 pounds of trash every day. Like every human. Or every American, I should say. And those are actually old numbers from like the early 2000s. So it's probably more now because we've just accelerated capital consumption. So do you know what plastic is? Corey, do you know what plastic is?
Only because I reviewed the notes for this. I could have taken a stab at it, but...
What is plastic?
I believe it's a series of polymers.
I love that I have the notes and you don't. You could have had there was no rule. You could have brought.
I mean, they're up there on that shelf. I just didn't want to go over there and
Don't
rustle.
get them.
Yeah,
You can't
no,
have them.
no, I know. I like the test. I like the quiz.
Perfect. All right, what is plastic?
I remember it was like a series of polymers, and they're linked together, or monomers linked together into a polymer.
That's it. I don't even understand what that was. I just wrote it down. I actually got that from a plastics council, what is it? The petroleum industry has like these plastic counts. That's where I got it from. I don't even know what any of that means. So plastic begins life as a natural product, and this is an important part of plastic propaganda. Every synthetic on this planet, nearly everything, begins with some kind of natural product, right? Because we can only make what we have on the planet. Yeah. So the refinement and isolation of compounds from a natural product, then catalyzed with other natural materials to create a new artificial product. In our case, plastic. Then you start with a natural thing. You fuck it up with science a whole bunch, and then you wind up with a new thing that didn't exist before.
Well, this is what I would just like to say. The word natural means nothing. Yeah. Because like mercury is on the periodic table, but you can't chug it. You know, like you could once. You know, so.
So, this is like the birth of a bet. Like you just said once. I would love to find someone who is like, I could do it twice. like guarantee. I can.
I just want to mention that Fuck the Poor does not condone drinking mercury, and we stand by complete abstinence when it comes to drinking mercury.
Corey does not speak for our legal team.
Okay. Okay. Please sign a waiver before you do so.
No, I actually, one of the sponsors of this show, I don't know if you knew this, was actually Old Timey Thermometers.
That was the brand, Old Timey Thermometers.
No, that's like all the old. They're the ones that sponsor us.
Right, with the big mustaches. And, You think they're hipsters, but they're not.
They're not. They're from 1920s.
Yeah. The penny farthing is earned.
Yeah. And they've actually, I've got just a bunch of cases of broken mercury thermometers in my closet.
Yeah, and when they get stuck in your skin when they break, it's the worst.
That's fine.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. Sorry. Yeah, no, it's totally fine. Mm-hmm.
Just like asbestos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The whole thing.
So you can make plastic, Corey, I don't know if you do this. You can make plastic out of lots of stuff, like cellulose, which is actually the insoluble pieces of plant matter. Yeah. You can make it out of coal, natural gas, salt, crude oil, seaweed, apparently. I can't explain polymerization to you. You did a pretty good job. I don't understand chemistry, but that's how plastic is made.
I just imagine Legos.
You start with a monomer as the primary ingredient. It's like one of those 1x1 little Lego blocks, and maybe you add like a 1x2, and then the monomer, you just keep growing. Like you grow the monomers together, that when you combine with other ingredients, they form very long polymer chains. So you would use a monomer like ethylene or propylene, and you combine that with a petroleum byproduct called naphtha. And when those two are combined, that's when plastic life begins. Life begins at conception of naphtha and ethylene or propylene.
It's beautiful.
And ethylene comes from natural gas, and naphtha comes from petroleum. So when you hear about oil and gas pipelines, you probably think of oil to make fuel for cars and gas to heat our homes, but that is just the tip of the iceberg. So to get ethylene and propylene, you have to refine natural gas. To get naphtha, you have to refine crude oil. So that's where the natural part of plastic ends. You break apart two crude resources by distillation, dehydration, or a bunch of other complex processes to get the building blocks of plastic, and those are called fractions. So now naphtha may contain benzene, which is a carcinogen. That's not funny. Ethylene is a known carcinogen, and propylene is probably a carcinogen. It is. None of these things are good.
Right? We have no sponsors.
So right off the bat, we're doing great, right? We're taking crude substances, breaking them down into cancer-causing ingredients that we then combine to make an artificial material that can take between 20 and 500 years to decompose, and we make a shitload of plastic. Like, so plasticoceans.org, which I highly recommend people going to, estimates the annual production of plastic. They estimate it's as high as 380 million tons per year, every year. And half of that is just single-use plastic. It goes from a retailer, it goes from manufacturer to, the retailer who purchases it as packaging. And then it goes into your home, and then you just throw it away. So half of 380 is 190 million tons of plastic every year. You're touching once and then tossing like in a trash can. And that's over 10 million tons. This is a different statistic. Over 10 million tons of plastic is dumped into our oceans every year, where it just kind of floats and swirls and drifts to faraway lands that we never think of. And this is where plasticoceans.org is really actually super cool. So it has a graphic on the website where you can go to a place on the map and you can click on the ocean, and it'll show you where in the ocean, like there's plastic there. It'll show you where it comes from, and where it's going. So I'll get to that in a minute. So when the plastic is floating and swirling in the ocean, the sun bakes it and breaks it down, but it does not decompose it. The plastic in the ocean breaks apart into tiny bits of plastic, and the plastic that's less than 5 millimeters in size, we call that microplastics, about the size of a grain of sand. And I'm sure, Corey, do you remember a few years ago, 2015, when we banned the use
and it was
microbeads.
Yeah, the microbeads. Yeah, you get some nice hand soap, and then it would have grit in it for some reason, which I always hated.
Well, so they would have like it was like hydrating microbeads.
Yeah.
It was supposed to like hydrate and all that.
Right.
But then they banned that. And do you know how big of an impact that had?
I'm assuming nil.
It had no.
Yeah, because big plastics turn into little plastics. You just
not only that, but like you think about it, beauty products is such a small segment of like the consumer, the plastic consumer market. Like it had zero impact. And also, like you said, the large plastic is constantly breaking down. So in 2015, the U.S. banned the use of microbeads, and that didn't solve anything because the plastic in the ocean is constantly offloading particulate, which is where shit gets into trouble in the ocean. But I actually want to. This is where I'm going to bring up the wild card, because this is the information that I did not share with you earlier. So we're going to put a pin in this. We're going to come back to the oceans, plasticoceans.org. Corey, do you know the number one single biggest plastic polluter on the planet?
So the short answer is no.
Give it your best shot.
Oh man, the biggest number one plastic polluter on the planet.
I'll give you a hint. It is a trick question, and it's not what you think it is.
Okay,
it's more
all right.
of a philosophy.
More of a philosophy. I presume that would be the plastics companies, right?
Nope.
If what they're creating goes straight into being pollution.
No.
Okay.
It's actually credit cards.
Oh no. Oh wait. All right, walk me through it.
All right. So credit cards are the catalyst for overconsumption. You think about you're spending money that you don't have to get stuff that maybe you don't need.
Right.
Maybe you do need it. Some people do need the use of credit cards. So, but here's the irony, and we're about to pull the pin back out of the ocean plastics. In 1997, I think this is funny, Greenpeace announced that it was going to release its own Visa credit card. Greenpeace released a sponsored Visa credit card.
Nice.
I think this was in conjunction with Manchester Bank in England, and instead of with regular instead of regular plastic, they actually used a biodegradable plastic called Biopol to make the Greenpeace Visa credit card.
Smell a comeuppance.
Which is great. Except that, like I said, credit cards are the single biggest plastic polluter in the world because of overconsumption. And so now we're going to pull a pin out of. There was no follow up to that. Actually, it's just they just did that.
Yeah.
And I thought it was funny because we're about to now talk about the oceans.
Right.
But thank God there aren't any Greenpeace visas floating in the oceans.
That's true. They're all biodegradable, right?
They're all gone now.
Yeah.
That's from 19. I don't know if they probably don't still do that. That would be neat. So, all right. So who's eating plastic? Why would you eat it? It's stupid. You know who does? Sea life.
Yeah, I was like
dumb.
birds,
they're
sea
dumb.
life.
Animals are dumb.
Yeah.
So let's talk about filter feeders. They get oysters. Filter feeders, like oysters, get their sustenance by sucking in water and filtering out the edible bits. And these filter feeders consume lots of microplastics because they're just constantly sucking in the water.
It's a volume business.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But oysters, they absorb it. But they don't actually like digest it or anything. They just poop it straight back out. And they've done studies that show that the oysters actually don't like the plastic. They'll figure it out and they'll avoid it. But
really?
Yeah, but sea cucumbers actually prefer plastic to whatever else they eat in the ocean. And as you can imagine, probably plastic doesn't have a lot of nutrients in it. So sea cucumbers will seek out the microplastics and filter it, and then they'll just die.
Right, because it's nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they die. And larger animals in the sea that both live in the sea and also use the sea as a source of food, like birds, they go after the larger debris. Birds, marine mammals, and turtles are more likely to go after the large bits of plastic, including sacks, like plastic sacks. And those will block their digestive systems, tear them up from the inside, and it makes them feel full, and then they won't go after like their regular food because they feel full, and then they'll starve to death. But it also will obviously, if your diet is fucked up, it'll fuck up your immune system, it'll fuck up their reproductive systems, and it isn't just like some turtles. All 7 species of sea turtles have been found with plastic in their digestive systems, and so like just all over the planet, all turtles in the ocean are eating plastic. And I wrote this anecdote. So we love turtles, right?
Right.
We love them, right? We think of them as, we don't keep sea turtles as pets,
Right.
But if we could, we probably would.
Yeah, definitely.
If we had,
anything that'll stay in a cage.
if we had a few acres of ocean behind us, we could just
Right. Just
get some sea turtles.
Yeah, I'd name it.
I like to think of sea turtles
Nemo.
as like the world's pets.
Yeah.
And they're like I think they're like the Labrador retriever of the sea.
I think that's right.
See, so think about that time that your dog ate that bag of like mushrooms and had the worst trip of her life, and then had diarrhea all over your house, and you had to take her to get an X-ray to find out why she was like puking and vomiting and panting all over the place, only to discover a large Ziploc baggie blocking her intestines. And that's basically what we're doing all the time to sea turtles.
And a lot of times within the food web, a lot of times things that smaller animals eat, they trickle their way up. And so within larger animals, a lot of times you'll get concentrations of man-made substances, I'm assuming including plastics, in these larger like predators. So like if you look at like one of the reasons that tuna or some of these larger predatory fish are so dangerous to eat is because they concentrate all of these like human-born chemicals within their fat cells as part of their just from eating the smaller animals that consume that stuff. So I imagine plastic also trickles out to animals that don't eat plastic but eat the animals that eat plastic.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point, because you'll wind up with sick animals who've like started like with the microplastics, right? And they will get sick from eating this plastic, and they're still targeted, or they're still hunted by the larger predators.
Easier to catch. Yeah.
So if you have even if the predatory animal isn't eating the plastic directly, you're eating a sick smaller organism that is in turn going to get you sick. I mean, you're absolutely right. It filters up as well.
It's like in your rotisserie chicken from Costco, and you find inside like a Coca-Cola bottle. And,
It's actually the opposite of trickle down economics.
Yeah, exactly.
It is the opposite.
Triple up plastonomics.
So, Corey, do you give a shit about sea turtles?
Actually, I mean, they're definitely on my give a shit
If you
list.
don't, you can just say so, and that's fine.
No. I mean, like I don't walk around worried about them. But they're part of animals I'm worried
Would you
about.
eat a sea turtle?
I don't think I would, unless it was him or me.
Well, if you did eat sea turtles, you might give a shit about them.
I give a shit anyway.
Okay, well,
Should I not give a shit about sea turtles?
I don't give a shit about sea turtles.
Okay, I mean, I don't give a shit about mosquitoes.
I don't care if sea turtles choke on
should,
Kroger
I
sacks.
guess.
Okay, I don't care. Let them die.
Okay,
Let
all
the
right. Well,
fucking
I'm taking
sea
your
turtles
lead
die.
on this,
I don't
Joseph.
give a
You're
shit.
you're an influencer for me.
I'm just saying. 10 million tons of plastic that goes into the. By the way, I actually love sea turtles, and they should be protected.
I can see it in your eye. There was a twinkle.
It was just a bit. It was terrible. The 10 million tons of plastic goes into the ocean everywhere, and it has to go somewhere. And one of those places is the stomachs of animals that get their sustenance primarily from the ocean. So the other place the plastic goes. You might be familiar with a little nation called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Have you heard about this sovereign nation?
I have. Yeah.
It is a sovereign nation.
Yeah.
It has no like actual physical boundaries. It's just constantly like shifting and morphing, and it doesn't have a permanent location either. It's just shifting in the Pacific
I've heard
Ocean.
of this. Yes.
It's a beautiful place. If you
I've
ever
heard.
get the chance.
Yeah.
There's no airport.
Right.
There.
So you have to land on a pontoon boat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And hope you don't get caught in the
right.
Tide bottles.
That's right.
Yeah.
Do you know how big the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is?
Very big.
It is as big as India.
As India. I was going to say
fucking country.
Texas, but
No,
we're
it's as big
talking
as
next
fucking-
step.
it
We're
is-
talking big Texas.
It is 1.3 million square miles.
Wow.
And so here's what's interesting about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch that I didn't realize. It is not a contiguous body of just like plastic bottles. It is basically this giant like ocean swarm, like where the current takes all this plastic. You have large debris.
Right.
You also have microplastics, but they stay in this same like ocean current.
Yeah, because of the
swirling
way
around.
the
Yeah.
ocean sort of makes a convection around a circle, and it kind of gets trapped in the eddy, kind of like a plastic bag.
Exactly. You can think of it as like when you it's an eddy,
American
a giant
Beauty.
ocean eddy. So the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is just one of seven garbage patches
One for
in
each
our
continent.
oceans. That's right.
It's kind of beautiful.
Everyone has its own its own little ocean colony of garbage. That's how fucking big the ocean is, Corey. We have seven continents and 7 subcontinents of just garbage for all their trash.
Probabilistic continents of plastic.
So, like I was saying earlier, and this goes back to the plasticoceans.org, plastic in the ocean is picked up by ocean currents, and it either winds up in a huge swirling island of its own design, or it traverses the seas and lands on shores far away. And plasticoceans.org shows that a bottle dropped in the ocean off the coast of China would be carried eastward across the Pacific to a spot like a few hundred miles off the west coast of the United States. And a plastic bottle dropped in the ocean of the east coast of the United States, say like New York, it would travel east to Europe, where they actually pinpointed it would concentrate in the Bay of Biscay and also the North Sea. So much of the plastic coming from the eastern seaboard actually just winds up floating in the middle of the Atlantic. And the story is actually different in India. And this we're kind of gonna get a little sad because India is would you call India a developing nation? Or
I think it's fair to say that you have a developing nation, industrializing nation. Yeah.
It's wild because before it was colonized by the British, it was actually like a heavy industrial society, and I would say it was actually more developed.
And it was the British policy to deindustrialize these places,
and now it is developing.
Yep.
So perfect. We've regressed, and now we're somewhere on the right track. So in India. India is actually one of the world's biggest plastic polluters, with about 15,000 tons of plastic trash generated every day. So 15,000 tons of plastic trash every fucking day. And when it enters the water around Mumbai, it just kind of stays in the Indian Ocean. It swirls over to Madagascar. It swirls east to the Bay of Bengal, which is one of the most heavily polluted bays on Earth. So now we're going to talk about India for a minute, because this is... now we're going to start talking about third world countries, and it ain't good.
Yeah.
We have not done a good thing here, Corey.
Yeah.
We've done a horrible thing. Perhaps we should talk about why we have plastic in the first place.
I mean, I assumed it's because for the corporations that profit by the plastic, and they chose that over like reusable and circular materials because it was cheaper and more profitable for them.
Yes, that is a great way to put it. Another way that you could put it is that humans really like mixing shit. Like just combining a bunch of shit together.
Yeah, we're kind of big on tool use.
We like putting stuff in jars, shaking it around.
Oh, yeah.
Stirring it.
Right, yeah.
Heating it up.
I love a good fondue.
Cooling it down.
Yeah.
And that's in 1856. 1856, I don't even know this. The first patent was granted to Alexander Parkes for his material called Parkesine. He named it after himself. And that was the first man-made plastic. Parkesine was cellulose that had been treated with nitric acid, which created pyroxylin, which was then dissolved in alcohol. And as we talked about, cellulose, is the indigestible parts of plants.
Yep.
And so Parkesine was after what can we do with this shit? And he was like, I'll pour some acid on it. And then
as one does.
Then he was like, oh, what the fuck did I just do? I got plastic. So the first use of plastics is actually pretty interesting, because it was not medicine. And it actually had a somewhat noble but unintentional environmental impact. So Parkesine was clear, and it was hard, and it was durable, and it made an affordable replacement. The first commercial use of it made affordable replacement for ivory.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
which
you can almost look at that as a positive.
You could. It meant that you could get the look of ivory without all the elephant genocides going on. And so that sounds great, but rich people don't do affordable, and they also don't.
The
do
point is that
knockoffs.
it's expensive.
Yeah. The point is, so really, just fake ivory just help like the middle class look wealthy,
right?
And so you find Parkesine buttons, combs, anything with a handle, like a
In the same manner, you'd find uses for ivory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it could mimic the look of expensive ivory at a fraction of the price. And we probably did not save any elephants with the invention of
Probably not.
plastic
That's
cones.
true. No. Yeah. It just whetted the appetite for the real thing, I'm sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then here we have this, product Parkasine, and we know that we can now, combine different chemicals, and we can create these like sort of more malleable, semi-permanent materials. And so you get some more advanced chemists coming in and doing their work. And so in 1869, 1870, inventor John Wesley Hyatt blended camphor with nitrocellulose, this is actually all right.
Camphor,
So nitrocellulose. So here's my favorite thing about this. Hyatt hypothesized that he could blend these two things, and his I guess like his mentor or whatever was like, hey, you shouldn't do that, it'll explode. And he was like, fuck you, I'm doing it. He said, bet. So he did, and it produced the product that you might have heard of. It's called celluloid. It's a hard,
And now we're back to the movies.
And so, the patent comes along, and people start using celluloid in new and exciting ways. Some of them take off, others don't. But by 1888, so just 18 years after the invention of celluloid, Louis Le Prince would use celluloid film in the very first live action film recording. It was a silent film. It was a 2.1 second masterpiece called Roundhay Garden Scene, which was filmed in Leeds. And it is not interesting. Like, it's not even... Right. I wrote a joke here, and it's not even like... 2 seconds is not enough time for me to make fun of it. Like, it's just...
It's the Boba Fett of the world of film.
When you were a kid, did you have a camcorder?
My parents did. Yeah, we had a little camcorder.
When you first got it, was your dad like the guy like, I'm gonna put the VHS tape in, I'm gonna like test it out, and then he like just starts recording, and then he's like, oh, I guess it works, and he like shuts it off.
Yeah.
That's what Louis Le Prince did with his camera. He was like, oh, get all this cellular, let's see if it works. Oh, it works, guys. And then he's like, hey, you want to see the movie? And it's like, Louis, come on, bud. Like, we've never seen a movie before. This sucks. Like, this is terrible. They have high standards.
I mean, back in the day.
So plastic, the history of plastic is actually full of people naming it after themselves. So you had Parkasine, and then in 1907, this is actually one of my favorite topics. Have you heard of Bakelite?
Oh yeah, actually, I was thinking of Bakelite when you were talking about the fake ivory. I was like, that kind of reminds me of like a proto Bakelite. Yeah.
In 1907, a Belgian American chemist. You want to guess his name?
Sir Bakes-a-Lot.
So close. Leo Bakeland.
Ah, man.
Bakeland.
Right, because what was he, Belgian? Yeah, they don't do Sir in Belgian. That's where I got wrong. Yeah.
He developed a 100% synthetic material. I don't think you're ready for this name.
Not ready.
Polyoxybenzylmethylglyocolahydride.
Gesundheit.
That is a thermoset material formed by the reaction of phenol and formaldehyde. It was patented as Bakelite in 1909, and it was actually a game changer due to its heat-resistant properties, electrical non-conductivity, and the ability to be shaped into almost anything, but it was hard and durable once cooled. And Bakelite was used for everything in the beginning of the 20th century. Radio and telephone casings, kitchenware, clocks, toys, jewelry, and even firearms. It was also incredibly popular all the way through World War II. Newer plastics invented in the 30s that were easier and more affordable to produce superseded Bakelite type plastics by the late 1940s, basically after World War II.
Yeah.
World War II saw a lot of innovation in plastics and chemistry in general.
Right, as war tends to do.
And also a glut of, like, once we were done with the war effort, we had a glut of petroleum. We also... Other things happened across the sea outside of the confines of World War II that gave us a huge glut of all of a sudden now we're like petroleum rich. Like a lot of shit going on, especially in the Middle East.
Yeah.
With
discovery
BP and Iran. Yeah. So so by the 40s we had different cheaper versions, more malleable, and that ultimately replaced Bakelite. But do you do antiquing? You ever go?
I have been into antique stores. I don't personally antique.
So one thing, did you know that Bakelite was a collectible?
I strongly suspected that whole mid-century modern post-war era has entered its last stage of chic. So
So if you're into antiques, you'll recognize Bakelite as the most desirable plastic. It's a pre-war plastic. Plastic is,
Oh, it's pre-war. Okay, that makes sense.
yeah. So plastic is itself, it's not antique unless you're talking about pre-war plastics. And Bakelite products are super expensive for what they are. I just did some Googling and I found some like brown Bakelite horse brooches. A set is 2 brooches, and that was $200 for the set. Wow. And they're just little, just little plastic
I'm
ponies.
familiar with like Bakelite jewelry, bangles, things like that.
Yeah, and so those, if you find some Bakelite bracelets, those go for $100, like every day. Now, actually, I found a really chunky Bakelite bracelet yesterday, and it's a large plastic thing. Like I don't have a picture of it, but it's yellow and it has kind of like a marbled look to it.
Yeah,
$495.
Wow.
And they were sold out of them. It was like they had found them somewhere.
Right.
And so people are paying $500 for like these 1930s Bakelite bracelets. So,
Rich
Bakelite.
people problems.
Bakelite. So this takes us up to World War II. After the war, you have a world in chaos trying to rebuild itself. Traditional materials like wood and metal have been scarce. They've rationed for the war effort. And plastic technology has advanced during the war because of that scarcity. We also have a public ready to recover from a decade of austerity measures, an industrial capacity that allows for plastic production at scale. And we have a better knowledge of plastics in general. From 1939 to 1945, the output of plastic would nearly quadruple from 100,000 tons starting in 1939 at the beginning of the war. And at the end of the war, we were producing 365,000 tons of plastic a year. And from then on, we've just had an exponential output of plastic since then. So and here's something that happens in the 70s. And I've kind of gone way off script here, but that's okay because I can bring it back. So in the 70s, we have this explosion of growth in the 50s, right? And we have continued growth for the 60s. And then by the 70s, we get to this point now where we actually have people starting to ask questions about plastic. People are seeing a lot of plastic trash.
Yeah.
And so there's now this concern like, well, it seems like we're producing a lot of plastic. Perhaps we should do something about it. And this is where like the recycling thing kicks off, like where you.
Yeah. And this is the part I'm excited about. So I'll let you continue.
We're gonna go back to India first.
Oh, perfect.
So we're gonna get, like I said, I'm going way off script here. So we get into this drive to recycle plastic, and we'll get into this in a minute. But long story short, that doesn't work. And what happens is we start selling our plastic to other countries. We just start selling trash, and one of those places for a long time is China. And they take our trash, and then recently they were like, no. So India becomes a place where we...
So India is the new China when it comes to where we foist our used plastic.
It's one of the places.
Air quotes, scare quotes, recycled plastic.
Yeah. So let's go back. Let's go back to India. So Professor Eric Van Sibyl, he is the physical oceanographer behind the website plasticadrift.org. He is a professor at Utrecht University, where his niche interest is in ocean currents and how ocean water circulates the globe. So he knows where all this shit goes. And the website at plasticadrift.org. I got the website wrong. Plasticadrift.org is where you can see the map of
the other
where
site
the
is not
plastic
safe for work, so don't look at it at work. Yeah,
that's correct.
It's like whitehouse.com.
So, Van Sibyl knows where all the plastic goes, and the website at plasticadrift.org, run by David Fuchs and Jack Murray, gives a detailed look at how we are literally drowning in trash and wrecking our seas. So back to the Bay of Bengal. A 2017 photo essay for The Guardian, Plastic Pollution Blights Bay of Bengal in Pictures. Photographer Jacques Lanoy captures in excruciating detail the sheer madness of the plastic problem in India. His photo essay begins with a look at the backwaters of the Chanabar River in Puducherry, and it is a pristine photo. I don't know if you looked this up. I'll try to describe it. There are dark clouds. They're reflecting on an inlet with driftwood scattered around a muddy shore, and it's all lined with like this thick forest of leaning palm trees. And it looks like the way the Bay of Bengal should look. It's not the typical picture of coastal beauty. It's not white sands. It's not bright sun. It looks like a muddy inlet.
And you're about to tell me it still looks that way, right? Don't break my heart.
That one bay does.
Okay, good.
That one does. It's because it's not in the current where the trash goes.
Got it. Yeah.
It's like around the corner from that.
Okay.
You can't get there from here.
Gotcha.
And then
If you're plastic.
also I'm sure like actually just outside of the frame there's like a shitload of plastic. So but so it's untouched. This particular bay is untouched by erosion and pollution, and it hints at what we lose when our reckless need for more and more goes unchecked. That sounds like extreme. I wrote it, obviously. I was in my feelings when I wrote that.
Yeah, no, I get it.
But it really does. Like when you see the pictures side by side, you realize like, okay, unchecked pollution, consumption that leads to pollution, like we do indeed lose our part of our natural world with all of this. So let's.
And I think that's a really powerful argument. I think there's a lot of people who are not environmentalists, but they respond to, especially on the right, they respond to arguments that say we lost something good and we need to return to it. And so I don't know. I just want to stop and appreciate that as a framing for why we need to eliminate plastics, which is that it's already has taken things away from us. It already is making beautiful places worse, and we could go back to that as an argument for reducing these single-use plastics that may resonate with people who aren't environmentalists or don't care about it more broadly.
And what's wild about that to me is growing up I would have, and this will sound really weird, I would have considered myself a conservative.
Yeah.
But like
there's a cultural element to that.
Yeah.
Like non-policy.
Yeah. And the message that I was getting, right, like, because there's this idea like give me like the 3-cent version of like what typical conservatives would say they believe in.
Oh, family values and God and loving your mother and apple pie and this land is my land.
Yeah, it's like this naive idealized version of like
it's a
the
very
American
1950s,
dream.
1960s.
Yeah. And when I was a kid, I was like, hey, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so, but I also grew up like we would go like hiking and camping and we went fishing.
Right.
And it was like we would always go in like these remote sort of like, country areas, or you'd be in like these state or national parks. And like it was always so pretty, except there was always litter. It was so weird to me that we were enjoying these things, right? Like we were going out into the world to enjoy the world. But everywhere you went, there was always like garbage. And it always seemed strange to me, like, why would you? And my family didn't recycle. And so we just threw everything away. And I remember growing up, there was such like a disconnect because, I felt like I was always picking up trash, like in the neighborhood, like,
yeah,
which will sound weird, but I used to cut a lot of grass. And like one of the things you do is like, you don't want to like,
hit a tin can with your mower.
Exactly. Yeah. Or a glass bottle and like shred your ankles. Like
right. Exactly. Yeah.
So, and then you never know what's in a plastic or a paper bag or a plastic bag.
Right.
So you go and you pick it up.
Poo. Yeah.
And I just remember thinking like, why we don't recycle? Like nobody but why would you? Why wouldn't you recycle if you like nature and you enjoy nature?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So.
I think scientists have a name for that. I'm going to mess it up, but it's something like the belief, like the value action gap or something. It's a more technical term than that, but it's you have these beliefs and there's a gap between that and like the actions you would take if you were logically extending from that belief.
Yeah, and what I realized, it took me a while to realize that the beliefs of a typical conservative don't actually line up with what they do.
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's my favorite thing. It's a fun game. It means nothing, but the hypocrisy game is always fun to play, like the at-home edition. Yeah.
Let's go back to India. So that beautiful, pristine, muddy inlet that was actually taken in Puducherry, like I said. And with this next photo, that we see from Jacques Delannoy is also in Puducherry, and this is at a seawall, and it is covered in trash. I don't know if you looked at this. I mean, you have not very well, you have houses by the seawall where people live. It's an impoverished neighborhood, so some of them look like sort of lean-tos. And the seawall, as you can imagine, is a lot of large rock, like to break the waves. And in the photo, there's a woman laying out fish to dry, but you can't actually see the fish because the seawall is just covered in plastic that is washed ashore. So she is literally preparing her fish on top of a mound of garbage. It's a pretty sad photo. It looks like, have you ever been to Bonnaroo?
I have not, but I've heard the legend.
The entire seawall looks like Bonnaroo
Post.
or Manchester,
Right.
after everybody hauls ass out of there.
Yeah, I had the benefit of going to see the Mummers Parade in Philly on the first of the year, January 1st. They had this big parade, and at the end, maybe the most impressive part of the whole parade is that there's just a pile of trash all the way down the middle of Philly. And the street sweepers come out and they just collect this enormous pile of trash, and that's my point of context for a wall of trash just tumbling down the road.
I really thought and hoped that you were going to say that they just left all the trash.
No, this is the middle of a city in a wealthy industrialized nation, so they clean it up and make it someone else's problem. So.
Perfect. So the trash in the Bay of Bengal swirling around, washing up on the seashores, and I really recommend anybody look up this photo essay by Jacques Delannoy to really get an idea of when we say that, you know, in the Indian Ocean, and India is the largest plastic polluter. It's unlike here in the United States, when you throw a bottle into the Atlantic, it goes across to Europe. In India, it just stays in the Indian Ocean, and it washes up on their shores. And we'll get to this in a minute. So even where trash is contained to a dump, like even if you weren't dumping it in the oceans, you can't really contain trash in a dump, because a dump is literally just an open pit for trash.
Right, yeah, you have seepage.
Yeah.
And even in the best of time, you're still awake because you have water penetration.
Yeah. So contaminated water carrying chemicals, microplastics, and sewage, and all sorts of hazardous chemicals. It seeps out of the dumps, and it ultimately will leach into the Bay of Bengal. Trash piles up in mangroves where fish spawn and mature before ultimately going out to sea. So if trash is piling up in the mangroves and fish are spawning there, they can't really grow and mature. And so to combat this, Chennai banned the use of thin plastic bags, that's something.
Solid.
That's something. But it's nothing. They did nothing. So here's a fun experiment, Corey. Did you do this experiment? I sent it to you as homework. Did you do it?
Let's go with yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So you tell me what happened when you went to Google and you asked Google how to end plastic pollution. What did Google tell you?
Fundamentally, you can't.
No.
Oh no, it was the individual. Yeah, and that's the part I'm really keen to discuss. So whenever we get there, just let me know.
Individual responsibility. That's
Yeah.
right. If you ask Google about plastic pollution, the majority of the hits you get will be like how you, the individual, how you can help in plastic pollution.
Right. No collectivization.
No. But buried in those results is something that actually is important, and it actually happened and is good. There was an ambitious goal set by the United Nations in Paris this year. The goal is to phase out plastic waste entirely by 2040. There's no concrete resolution to this. They're like it's a goal that they've identified. But unlike basically everything else, the United Nations has actually identified the primary source of pollution, and that is not credit cards. You were right the first time. It's the manufacturers of plastics.
Oh yeah. I mean, they push it. They generate the demand through their marketing and their business operations. Yeah.
Yeah, and so to the UN's credit, they identified, well, it's the people aren't making the plastic. They're only consuming what you're producing.
Policy.
Yeah. So at least the UN has identified that manufacturers are to blame. So corporations have been producing plastic since the 1950s, and to date, something like, well, let's back up. We already talked about World War II. Corporations have been producing plastic at accelerated rates since 1950. And to date, something like 8.3 billion metric tons of plastic have made it onto this earth. I didn't make that. I didn't make 8.3 billion pounds.
I didn't demand it. I didn't buy something glass and then say, hey, this is way too heavy. Can you please make it plastic? I've never written that letter to a company.
No, I didn't. Wasn't me. I didn't do it.
I don't know.
So plastic is. Do you know why we have so much fucking plastic? It's because it's a $500 billion a year industry, and it's expected to reach a market cap of 880 billion by 2020 or by 2030, and that is, the full 10 years before we're supposed to do without plastic on this planet completely. So we're still going to see a ramp up of plastic, even though we know it's bad for the environment, and we know that the UN wants it gone by 2040. Yeah, we'll go through this next part. This will be good. All right. So the top largest manufacturing corporations of plastic are ExxonMobil, followed by LG Chemical. Yes, that's the electronics giant LG. They have
that part surprised me. Yeah. I was pretty shocked by that.
There's a French corporation, Total Energies, China Petroleum and Chemical Corporation, and the Saudi Basic Industries Corporation. Those are the top five largest.
Gotta have the Saudis. Yeah, they're always.
We really are hitting everything here. You've got ExxonMobil, LG, we got the French corporate, you got China, and you got Saudis. You get everybody.
The whole gang's here.
Yeah. If they're dealing in crude, they're dealing in plastics.
We got all of OPEC here, kids.
Now, so this is where we can get into what you're really excited about.
Yeah.
All right. So these corporations are very aware that fossil fuels face a reckoning as more and more electric vehicles hit the streets. And they are heavily invested in refining crude oil and natural gas because they know that eventually we're going to be consuming less gasoline, but they still have all this petroleum infrastructure and natural gas infrastructure. So they're going to really be pushing the plastic.
What to do.
So the plan is, as you might guess, to come up with more uses for plastic as fossil fuel demand wanes.
It reminds me of how the American Dairy Council worked with the U.S. government to come up with stuffed crust pizza because they just needed more places to stick cheese.
I feel like we're entering conspiracy theory territory.
No, that's just. I think that's public record. I think that's real. Yeah. They're I want to say it's the USDA. This information is a little old. It's a little dusty from the head, but I clearly remember being surprised reading from a reputable source.
So you're telling me that stuffed crust pizza was actually like a government program?
It was encouraged in some manner by the U.S.
it's a
government.
CIA black op.
It was they had black sites. There were people against it, and they turned up in Abu Ghraib. That part's fictional, by the way. But as far as I know, it could be true. Have you ever crossed the American Dairy Council? I'm just saying.
I just imagine like a pizza corporate giant like Pizza Hut forcing its will on other fast food corporations. Like you have Grimace chained up at Abu Ghraib. And some corporate lawyer for Pizza Hut's just shoving stuffed crust down his throat.
Oh yeah, no, it's Grimace foie gras with the cheese.
Rumble.
I mean, what do you think the Hamburglar went? When's the last time you've seen him in a commercial?
Eat this cheesy crust, you purple fuck. Okay, Joseph here. So this episode went really long because I really enjoyed talking to my friend Corey. So I'm going to split this into several episodes, and we'll pick up with more exciting episodes in the future. Our online presence has changed too. You can now visit us at uftpultra.com. That's UFTP as in unfuck the poor, ultra.com.